Yo, we in this. But before we get to today's essay, I wanted to ask you to help me write more essays. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. And visit my Ko-Fi at ko-fi.com/sidewinder. Check out the description for more. And without further ado, today's essay. The Cult of Transgression. The Way of Pangression. A society is defined by its organization and the commonality of its people. This organization and commonality is always expressed, in part, as a set of rules. These rules may be implicit or explicit, but they always serve as a set of expectations for what is or isn't tolerable for the society and its members. Breaking the rules is intolerable to any society, but not necessarily any individual. Therefore, breaking the rules is only intolerable if society discovers the transgression. Furthermore, rule-following members of society have limited liberty. Therefore, having the privilege to break the rules in secret is a novel liberty and an advantage over the rule-following members of society. The greater these secret transgressions can be, the greater the potential advantage. To achieve the ultimate transgression, and thus the ultimate advantage, requires conspiracy. Born of kinship and like-mindedness, secret societies form within the greater society in order to participate in cooperative transgression. For the secret society, transgression serves the dual purposes of gaining advantage and building trust among the co-conspirators. Finally, a transgression arms race begins, forcing individuals to compete for the greatest transgressions and forcing factionism within society to become total. This results in the Pangression, which is the commitment of all cardinal sins and the transgression of all taboos across all society. There are two Pangressions, societal and individual. The societal Pangression is when transgression becomes routine for an entire society. The individual Pangression is the commitment of all sin, violation of all taboo, and the offense of all society performed by one person. The individual Pangression can be achieved, is likely to be achieved, by several people and with increasing frequency until a critical point, wherein revolution enforces a new paradigm. In society, rules represent limitations of liberty. While it is reasonable to argue that some rules create a more free society than no rules, such as in the case of John Locke's second of his two treatises of government, it is a simple fact that rule followers are limited in the ways expected by their society. Rule breakers, transgressors, are not limited in this way, and thus have greater liberty. It is with this extra liberty that transgressors gain advantage over their rule-following, good-faith peers. An obvious and common example of transgression for advantage is thievery. Property and ownership are defined, one way or another, by every human society, and to displace or misappropriate things, particularly food and land, is universally offensive. However, those who have the privilege to secretly commit thievery gain an obvious and large advantage over those who cannot or do not. Those who have the privilege to conspire over their thievery and remain secret have the greatest advantage. It is important to remember that thievery is not the only useful transgression. Assault, murder, trafficking, extortion, humiliation, and many more transgressions can be just as useful for gaining advantage over other members of society. As wealth and power concentrates in the hands of transgressors, factionism begins to divide society into factions formed around the wealthiest and most powerful secret societies, and the business of transgression becomes an open secret. However, society at large remains ignorant of exactly who is doing the transgressions. They typically just know that it happens, and often even have faith that their leaders are addressing it. This ignorance is maintained by the wealthiest and most powerful transgressors, who are insulated from their consequences as their privilege and influence protects their privacy and legacy. This insulation from consequences takes infinite forms, including having vast resources for privacy, legal representation, influence in lawmaking and law enforcement, control of the media, and the employment of professional criminals. Secret societies form around conspiracy and productive transgression. For the purpose of this essay, a secret society is any group of 3 or more people who practice mutual discretion in order to maintain the secrecy of their activities. Given the breadth of this definition, many people participate in secret society and do not even realize it. These organizations take infinite forms, including but not limited to internet forums, video game guilds, criminal organizations, corporate trusts, families, unions, secret military units, private retreats, and any other organization which expects mutual discretion as a condition of membership. Simply being on the guest list at an exclusive place or event is enough to credibly assume someone is associated with certain secret societies. These secret societies vary in their activities, power, infamy, and discretion. Some secret societies and their activities are barely secret at all, while others are completely unknown to outsiders. The Ku Klux Klan and Freemasons are both examples of secret societies which are barely secret. Compare these organizations to Bohemian Grove or Skull and Bones, which are obviously more elite, powerful, and discreet. Of course, the most discreet secret societies are unknown to me. As factionism increases within a society, eventually everyone becomes part of one or more secret societies, one or more of which are engaged in cooperative transgression. Transgression begets advantage. Advantage begets liberty. Liberty begets greater transgression and greater advantage and greater liberties. Conspiracy has the potential to make the productivity of transgression grow in a parabolic manner. Compound these factors with secret societies competing for the limited resources of the society itself, and it can begin to become apparent why empires typically only last a couple dozen generations. The arms race of greater and greater transgressions in order to secure greater and greater powers for greater and greater avarice is not sustainable. As transgression becomes routine for more people and people choose more frequently to prioritize their secret society over the host society, secret societies erode the host society doubly. Factions form around the most productive and influential secret societies, often obfuscating the existence of the central secret society, as the greater faction can now be scapegoated to protect the secret society's discretion. Often, members of the greater faction are unaware of how their decisions are influenced by and the fruits of their labor are collected by the secret society they have unwittingly aligned themselves with. Inevitably, conspiracy and factionism create high concentrations of wealth and inequality. And inequality forces working class rule followers to consider less legitimate means of making a living. Simultaneously, productive transgressions become ever more accessible. Driven by a plethora of economic forces, factionism spreads rapidly, inevitably becoming total as each faction in their respective secret societies hoard wealth in competition, causing severe and illusory scarcity. This illusion of scarcity is mostly indistinguishable from actual scarcity for the proletariat, causing great animosity to form between members of rival factions perceive each other as occupying resources the other needs or deserves. Total factionism is a symptom of the transgression arms race, but it is also a point of no return. Once total factionism is achieved, Pangression has begun, and revolution is guaranteed. Competition over illusory scarcity forces all factions to prioritize their factionism over their patriotism, and the host society disintegrates along the lines drawn by secret societies and their greater factions. This conflict becomes a revolution as a single faction establishes dominance and becomes the host society itself. Part of this becoming includes legitimizing some of the faction's preferred transgressions, while making illegitimate some of what the previous host society saw as legitimate, effectively ending the Pangression. This process homogenizes society and has a sort of restarting effect on the transgression arms race. For the individual, Pangression is the achievement of all transgressions combined with the offense of an entire society and perhaps all humanity. For the transgressors, individual Pangression represents the ultimate unshackled liberty and maximum advantage over the rest of society. Unfortunately, these pseudo-Machiavellian villains are often surprisingly and disturbingly stupid in comparison to their power and influence, as infinite ignorance and confusion protects their egos from the crushing weight of guilt, accountability, and empathy. These idiot kings are enamored with obscenity and transgression and will commit Pangression simply for the thrill and the flex. Thus, transgression upon even the idea that they may benefit from the advantage afforded by their ultimate liberty. For these depraved ruler transgressors, obscenity is often the point. Self-enrichment is a responsibility they have delegated to their subordinates. Thus, they are free to spoil themselves and often prefer when everyone is watching them do it. Eventually, illusory scarcity and ever more frequent and severe obscenities drive factions within society to conflict. Often, but not always, this means civil war. This conflict, civil war or otherwise, is the height and climax of Pangression. The height, as the integrity of society itself is violated to the point of fracturing into factions, wealth is decimated, and the people are savaged and traumatized by the wages of sin. The climax, as civil war or the end of society, implies the end of any expectation for anyone to follow whatever rules. Without this expectation, transgressors no longer possess greater liberty than rule followers, and thus no longer possess advantage over them. The climax, as it is the final chapter of Pangression and the completion of the first chapter of Revolution. Revolution forms a new society from the corpse of the former society. The new society reinstates rule-following expectations in a way that is significantly different from the former state, but still necessarily gives the advantage of extra liberty back to transgressors. Thus, the transgression arms race begins again, and the cycle is repeated.